The Satanic Church, Anton LaVey, like really big, back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, vampire culture, all of this stuff was blowing up. Marilyn Manson, those things. Would you consider yourself friends with the LaVey family?
I know them, and I know a lot of people in that movement, and did get to know them. And I've told people this. Zena LaVey told me that she had put a death curse on her father to kill him. Hated him so much.
Wow.
Wow, okay. I was a little taken aback when she told me that, and he was dead a few months later. You come out of her now. This woman of God has commanded you in the name of Jesus. And all these women of God say, we the women of God, command you to go. Leave this woman alone. Go now. In the name of Jesus. Come out of her. Come out. Come out. Come out. Out of her now.
This interview with Bob Larson is an interesting one. I got to sit down with him, pick his brain about demons, how they operate, and many of the philosophical beliefs that are popping up within the church. One being that demons aren't real. They're all a figment of your imagination. They exist as a response to your thoughts, and they are only real to you. You create them. The moment you stop believing in them, the moment they go away. And so many people are holding to that theological belief. Many within the Christian charismatic and Christian mystical movements, heck, Christian Baptist movements, they don't believe in demons, that they can influence you or have access to your life. And this is a growing belief. I 100% respect the work that Bob Larson brought to the table and continues to bring to the table. I believe that paying homage and respecting those who have put in the work before you. So salute to Bob Larson and what he did early on. It wasn't easy for him. And you're going to hear that in this interview. You're going to hear that the same pushback that you and I get and have got from the religious realm, from Christianity, of anything fringe, anything outside of the norm, that there was this attack or agenda to shut it down. Let's not talk about those things. So Bob had to make a decision. Do you keep on pursuing these things? Do you keep on studying about demons and exorcisms and talking about it and bringing it up? Because whenever he brought it up, whenever he mentioned demons and those things, people begin to manifest. People begin to bring their troubles and the things that were afflicting them to Bob and just simply talk about it. And as he would minister, they would begin to convulse and manifest evil spirits. And I have to be 100% honest. One of the reasons why I do what I do is there was no conversation for this in the church. They just will not have the conversation. So I had to take it to a different audience, to people who want to have the conversation. You watching this, nobody's twisting your arm to be here. You came upon your own volition, your own free will. And what we understood is that there were many people who were willing, wanting to, dying to have these conversations about the deeper things of the Spirit, about the things that go overlooked in the Bible, the things that the pastors weren't ready or equipped to even speak about. Really quick, before we get started, if you are blessed by this ministry, if you're blessed by this platform, anything that I bring to the table, I ask you to partner with me via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah and you unlock rewards, my entire discography of music, webinars, meditations, weekly hangouts, and so much more. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Go check it out.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna
now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark's at it.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark's at it stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Today, my guest is Dr. Bob Larson. Bob, welcome to the TruthSeekah podcast, brother. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Great to be with you. You were with me a few months back, and so we're turning the tables, and now I'm there with you. Happy to be here.
Great, man. It's it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving me the honor to turn the tables, flip the tables a little bit. A lot of people are like, he's not going to do it. Bob's not going to come on your show. Yeah, he's not going to do it. I'm like, no, I think he is, man. He smiled when he said, yeah, I'll gladly come. And everybody's like, he's not going to do it and stuff. So thanks for coming.
Look, Daniel went into a den of lions. This is the least I could do.
Oh, come on. It's not that bad. This is a different interview. And that's my goal, is really just to pick your brain on some of the things that I'm interested in your ministry, how you got started, thoughts on certain types of demons and those kind of things. So I'm ready to pick your brain, man.
Okay.
So I wanted to show you this really quick. I still had this. This is from 2002. You won't really be able to see it, but it is some notes that I took on one of your lectures was dealing with the spirit of Thor, how to bind lesser demons, and a lot of things that you were talking about. And again, I would go to Christian gatherings and hangouts, and I would slap the Bob Larson tape in, and people would turn it off. That's weird. We're just hanging out. I said, no, we're gonna learn today. So that's a relic of mine. 2002. I still got that. So cool. So
can I make you a bid on that before you put it on eBay?
Yeah, after this interview, right? And again, I'm glad to sit down with you because turn the tables a little bit, because a lot of my audience couldn't watch the interview that we did together. A lot of them.
Why not?
I think a lot of them obviously have been hurt by the church and have had that conversation with loved ones and people who disagree with them and those kind of things. And the conversations turn into more of like a debate, an attack, or ridicule and things like that. I mean, we've all dealt with church people like that. And so it was interesting that a lot of people, they said, TruthSeekah, I got to turn it off. I couldn't watch it. I'm like, no, just keep watching. Like, we kind of warm up, and this is what Bob does, man. He's really good at it. So I'm glad that we get to sit down and I get to introduce you a little bit more to some of those people who weren't able to make it through that interview. Well, what would you say why they couldn't, get through it? I mean, does that make sense what I'm speaking about? This?
Yeah, well, I think it makes sense. They probably got demons, and their demons were afraid to watch me. No, that could be some of them, but I think for the most part, they take an all or nothing approach to an individual like myself. If somebody is a Christian, an evangelical believer, they're born again, they're over here. They have this mindset, but you can't in any particular group, whether it's Christian, pagan, or whatever, you can't have a monolithic view. And so there are individuals within the spectrum of any belief system who may look at it differently from what the norm is of that particular religious system. So yes, I'm an evangelical born again Christian, but I'm a little bit outside the box. So I relate to people who are outside the box.
How did you get started with, getting into deliverance ministry or exorcisms and things like that? Where did it start for you?
Well, I didn't look for it. It looked for me. And I started out really, I planned to go into medicine. I was a rock musician. I put myself through college playing in a band. And then I decided I wasn't going to go on into medicine. I was going to do, I didn't know what, actually. I signed up with some motivational speaker agencies, and I traveled the country for a number of years kind of doing that, speaking churches and here and there, getting a taste of what the Christian world was like. And then after studying for the ministry, I finally decided to go into it full time. And the demon thing wasn't something I was looking for. I didn't have a serious interest in it until I started traveling internationally. So when you get outside the United States, you get to Africa, you get to the Middle East, you get to India, you get to Asia. The idea of demons is not foreign. They're very commonly aware of it. And those religions and those peoples, the world of what might be considered anti-science or superstition in America is very common to them. They're used to worshiping ancestors, and various spirits appear to them. And also they have demonic possession rituals where they actually call the spirits to enter into them and go into violent seizures. Well, seeing this overseas stirred my interest because I saw that. And then I read what was in the Bible. And I said, well, nobody talks about this in America. Nobody sees it in America. I'd like to see it. Nothing happened until traveling the country, speaking here and there for churches. I would have people come up to me and demons would present themselves, manifest themselves. And I had no choice but to deal with it or walk away. And I chose to deal with it.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things you can watch with, dealing with exorcisms and casting out demons for me is when somebody's just preaching, and usually on the subject of witchcraft and music and those kind of things, where, a lot of demons would get influence to somebody's life, and they're just preaching, and a random person in the audience begins convulsing and manifesting. Nobody spoke directly to them. It's just like shedding light to where that type of entity was hiding. Do you have that a lot where you aren't ready to start casting out demons or anything? You're just trying to get through a message and people just randomly just start convulsing and manifesting demons?
Well, I don't travel as much right now since COVID, and haven't really gotten back on the road to the extent I used to do, about 60 seminars a year, but I don't do that now. It's just not practical yet. But when I did that, one of two things would happen. Either there would be a manifestation, an outburst just in the middle of my speaking. They just didn't like what I was saying, and they would respond to it. Of course, when that didn't happen, I would get more aggressive, go out into the audience and challenge the demons to come forth. And in most cases, no matter what the size of the crowd, there would be one or more individuals who would scream, who would yell, who would go into seizures, sometimes quite violent.
Yeah. Wow. Your book of Bob Larson's book of spiritual warfare, slam packed with info, slam packed with different religions, what they believe and what they practice, and kind of approach it from a historical standpoint too, just kind of letting people know, getting a little bit of insight in that world. And with that being slam full of, info on spirituality and demonic possession and those things, what were some of the things that you read early on? Were there any Christian writers or influences that, books you read early on that kind of gave you some insight in working with casting out demons and those things? Was there any mentors around, during your time?
Zero mentors. There were only a handful of people even addressing the subject. And when I started out, I'd never heard of this guy, Derek Prince, who apparently became quite well known in this area, but I didn't know about him. I only knew of one person, a guy at Dallas Theological Seminary, who had written a book called Demons in the World Today. And he didn't cast out demons. He didn't confront demons. It was just a theological treatment of the subject. That was the only thing I had to go on. Of course, there's a proliferation of people claiming to know a lot about deliverance today and all kinds of books on the subject. There was nothing. So basically, I was flying by the seat of my pants without a parachute and figuring out what to do as I went along. So it was a good way to learn. I made a lot of mistakes, but it was an opportunity to develop my theology about it from the practical experience of what I encountered.
As far as some of the other, early stuff, I'm actually just getting into some of these people's stories of their lives, whether they existed or not, I don't know. But Saint Benedict was somebody that I just found out about his story. I have a Saint Benedict medallion that I got. I just thought it was interesting, his story and his encounters with the demonic, and also Saint Anthony of Egypt and some of these people who were venerated within the Catholic faith. Do those names mean anything to you in their stories? Would you have any comment on those?
Yeah, it does. And for example, I'm a great fan of Augustine. and his writings as an early church father. And I've read the others, such as Origen and so on. And almost every single one of them talk about demons. They talk about the spirit world. It wasn't an unusual thing in the first 3 to 4 centuries for people to do that. It was a normal part of the ministry of Christ. It was present in what we call the apostolic age, in which the book of Acts was written, but it continued way beyond that. And this is just simply a matter of history. There's a lot of literature out there written by academics who are not necessarily confessing Christians, but they're just observing the phenomenon as it was referred to. So, for example, if you read The City of God by Augustine, almost every page talks about demons. And he's constantly drawing the contrast between what he calls the city of God, which is the way God would have things to be if he were to rule and reign, versus the culture of the Romans. And, they worshiped thousands of gods and they had a God for everything. And so he was constantly saying to them, no, you're not worshiping some unseen deity. You're worshiping a demon. Your idol is a demon. And he would say those sort of things. And these earlier writers made those comments as if it's just, it's just normal. It wasn't anything unusual to say. Well, if you say that today, they might lock you away, particularly if you're in conference with a psychiatrist and he hears you say that, he's going to say, you need some meds.
Yeah.
So it's a very different zeitgeist that we live in now.
Yeah. With that being said, in the early church, the ministry of Jesus, the book of Acts, like all filled with examples of casting out demons. I mean, even all throughout the Old Testament as well. There's this growing movement within Christendom, and it seems, and I'll call them some type of Christian mystics kind of thing. It's more of the charismatic people that are becoming a little bit more mystical. But in that movement, there's this new idea that's growing in popularity that demons aren't real, that they're just a figment of your imagination, that you created them. And even all of the things within the scriptures, I've heard teachers say that Jesus was just responding to the delusions of the people. He was using their terminology because they believed in demons and those kind of things, and that these demons aren't real, and that they're all in our minds. What would you say to that doctrine or that growing belief system?
Well, I want to be clear here in what I'm responding to. You're saying the belief system that
demons aren't real. You create them.
They aren't real.
Yeah.
They're a psychological construct. Yes. They're the projection of something in people's minds. Yeah. And they're looking for a personification of evil out of some negative feeling that they have or something that is driving them to do something that's against their moral code. And they're in conflict with that. And they feel like, I have these urges at times. I want to kill somebody or I want to harm somebody. Where's that coming from? I'm not that kind of person. Well, of course, we live in a post-Freudian age in which psychoanalysis has pretty well become the state religion. That is the way everything is viewed. And yet, as you are aware of, and many of your people watching right now would be aware, across the big spectrum, let's say even America, the issue with the paranormal, obviously, all the television shows, and there are, dozens of paranormal radio shows and so on, shows like yours and others, exploring this reality of saying, no, wait a minute, maybe we've gone a little bit too far in the West, and we've explained away things that may be real, but which we have no immediate language or textual way to explain it. And so there's definitely a rise of interest in this sort of thing, as in the rise of witchcraft, the New Age, and esotericism of various kinds. It is an age in which you can talk about this now much more than you could 40 years ago when I was doing this. I mean, I was really an oddball, but now it's something that is part of the colloquy of culture, and people are interacting about it, for better or for worse.
It seems like just really anything that you throw out there, you're going to find an audience. Like, just because of the internet and search engines, whatever theory that you come up with, you throw it out there. If it gets in the algorithms enough, it'll attract attention or people who believe something similar, or you'll convince somebody. So we have all of these different conflicting ideas within even Christianity,
Yes. Well, today it's quite different from where it used to be in terms of source information. So my wife and I were just talking about this the other day. He said, you remember the day when you wanted to write a research paper and you had to hang out in the library for hours upon end? Now you don't go anywhere. You just pull out your laptop and you have the whole world at your fingertips. You can Google anything you want, and there will be something about that somewhere if you just get the words right. And if you don't get the words, you keep trying until you have it. So that's a very different environment. So that means that in a marketplace of ideas, there is much more available. And some of it's good, and a lot of it's bad, and some of it is literally crazy. And that's where you get, of course, this effort of the social media titans who are wanting to get control of that and try to monitor what people are allowed to hear and not hear. So it's an age in which that's very dangerous, because the curious who does not have a faith-based system that is rooted, as in my particular case, in a Judeo-Christian view of the world, and in particular as an Orthodox Christian view, you can go crazy out there.
Yeah.
There's a million things you can possibly believe. And so it's the best of times and the worst of times, to quote Dickens, because in a sense, it's a great marketplace, but in that marketplace, a lot of people are getting lost.
It's crowded. It's crowded now. And people, there's a lot of people who were asking me after we did the interview, I don't even know who Bob Larson is. I'm like, you got to do your homework. If you know who any of these, and I have to toot your horn, like if you know who Daniel Adams is, if you know who Vlad is, Isaiah Salvador, if you know who Brother Wayne Ministries, if you know who any of these people are, you got to know who Bob Larson is, because I don't think these ministries, I don't think, what I'm doing would exist if you had been one of the first ones, the only ones out there kind of paving the way for this at least conversation to be had,
Well, thank you very much. But the conversation was something that had to be forced. People didn't want to talk about it. I remember, we're going back, 40 plus years. I would speak in a church, and if I dared to try to talk about this type of thing, I remember one pastor, I had just come back from India, and at the time the Beatles were up with the Maharishi meditating, and the whole world was talking about this, and so I talked about it, and he was infuriated. He took me aside and he said, why would we even want to know about some strange guy in India and the Beatles going there? What's that got to do with anything? Of course, fast forward a little bit, and transcendental meditation is a worldwide phenomenon. And then there's somewhere between 10 or 15 million people who have signed up for it officially with the Maharishi's organization. Just that as an example. I believe that's very evil, but even if you don't believe it evil, it is a cultural phenomenon that is taking place. And back then, nobody wanted to discuss it, and nobody was aware of it. But I was into studying people like Joseph Campbell, for example, and his theory of archetypes. Even though I vehemently disagree with him, nevertheless, he was tapping into something that was out there where people were looking for these vague similarities between religious belief systems and wondering what was the truth.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah, right. So, I mean, even early on for me, what I'm doing, like, I approach this, I'm a Christian, you know what I'm saying? Like, my foundation, anyway, I'll say that.
Well, you and I have had a little disagreement about that, but we won't go there now.
Yeah, they can watch the interview that we did on Bob's channel. Go check it out for sure. But like, we couldn't have these conversations in church, and obviously you took it to a level where I'm coming from. I took it to a level that we couldn't have it. You're laughed at, you're made fun of, stay away from. You're the demon guy. You're the this guy or whatever. And so, yeah, what it's like to be a forerunner and to be able to talk about things that are now commonly discussed, in the church and other podcasts. And like I said, people like me and other, deliverance ministers, I'm a big person on giving credit where credit's due. Even if you disagree with the individual or the individual disagrees with you, Bob, like I have to give my roses. I have to salute, man.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. I remember back a long time ago, nobody knew who this guy was, Art Bell.
Yeah.
And Art Bell had me on his show. And what a stir that caused. Art Bell is now retired somewhere in Rumpf, Nevada, or wherever it is that he's gone to.
Oh, he's passed on.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. And but back then, like he's talking about stuff that was pretty crazy. And I agree with a lot of people, it was pretty crazy. But he was talking about it and there was a conversation going on. And so the way things are now is that people are a lot more curious than they were then. And they're not so quick. And this has got a good side and a bad side to it, to be open to what's out there. And my concern is that in this environment of this mass buffet of availability of spiritual beliefs and practices, if people don't have a root of some kind, and of course, my root is a biblical root, an Orthodox Christian root, more specifically, an evangelical Christian root, what's to say that they're not going to get into some pretty crazy things? And I deal with people all the time. I just, a lot of my time is personal one-on-one sessions with people all day long. And I did an exorcism on a lady yesterday in England who had taken 100 ayahuasca trips, 100. Yeah. And talk about getting demons and talk about getting a little spaced out after a while. One ayahuasca trip will do it, let alone taking 100 of them. So, there aren't any boundaries to a lot of people. They don't know that there ought to be boundaries.
With that being said, so, I come from the church background, a lot of there's Assemblies of God, but bleeds into, charismatic, kind of stuff. And there's like, it seems there's like anything can go. God woke me up and told me that the church is going to blow up tomorrow, and they'll give the person a microphone and let them share. And this person hasn't slept in a week. I'm just being honest with you.
Yes. I died and went to heaven last night, and I sat down at the feet of Jesus, and I had a chit chat with the Apostle Paul, and now I'm here back to tell you all about it.
I got a lot of friends in that, and I call BS. I'll say that. But the same thing is in the in the mystical movements. They're very similar. They're very like anything goes. I'm in a romantic relationship with an alien being, and I'm like, I don't know that you are. I know you believe that, and it's like that. It's helping you, kind of thing. Just like the Christian charismatic, God's going to destroy the world this Friday if we don't raise this kind of money or repent, kind of thing.
Or Donald Trump's going to be president. It's a given. It's a given. They're now dragging up old Kim Clement videos of him predicting the Putin invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, we're stretching it here.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? What's the boundaries? What is the confines? Is it men and women of integrity that, because if you correct these people, then they get mad, leave and go to another church, and then to another church, or eventually to an online church or something like that, right? What's the...
When I got started in ministry, the worst thing that could happen was to, quote, quench the spirit. And you perhaps know that phrase if you have an Assembly of God background. Sure. Don't quench the spirit. Well, that became a license for anybody to say almost anything they wanted. You want to hear a funny story? I'll never forget this. I had just started in the ministry. I was at a church in the Deep South, and I was speaking that night, and they had this little Bible study before I started, and they were having this debate. Was Jesus black? Now, I don't even know why they were having the debate, but this was an Assembly of God.
It might have been my church.
I'm not picking on the Assemblies of God, but okay. So they were having this debate, and they were going back and forth. I'm sitting there like, I'm just this white guy from the North. I don't even know this culture. And suddenly this dear old lady stands up in the middle of it and starts speaking in tongues. And she says, "Yea, I say unto you, this is the voice of the Lord. He was not black."
Yeah.
And that settled everything.
Settled.
And you know, I was just a new Christian, and I'm just watching this, and I'm thinking, is this how we determine theology? But, you know, it's got even crazier today. And all you have to do is look at what's in the marketplace out there, and everybody's got a revelation, and everybody's got a piece of instantaneous knowledge about what's going to happen in the next couple of days. But that's the danger, whether it is in the world of the mystic, or whether it's in the world of the New Age, or sometimes in the world of the church, of the individual spiritual entrepreneurialism running amok, where one person comes along without any sense of accountability to a broader group of people or belief structure. And to me, that's really where the problem is. Everybody becomes a license unto themselves. That's a very dangerous time in which we live.
I hear you. Well, you know, one thing that I do, you know, as far as research is concerned, and doing the stuff, and, you know, looking at your background, where you came from, where you started, and I'm just using you as an example. There's so many other people you can use, but people have done their research, and now you have experts on whatever, especially spiritual subjects. Somebody who did yoga one time, they're an expert, and they got a YouTube channel with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I mean, we've seen this with somebody, you know, noted celebrities like Stephen Bancarz, who came out of the New Age, and now he's a Christian. He's automatically got this platform, and they're experts, versus like, hold on, I've been to India. Hold on, we've done the research paper. I've read the books. I've done this kind of stuff. And it's just this interesting place again, where people out of nowhere are like instant credibility because of a great camera. You know, they're very, very great storytellers, you know, those kind of things. And it's like being able to judge between what I say, you know, the wheat and the tares, depending on the information.
Well, we used to say, if it's in print, it must be true. Now we say, if it's on the internet, it must be true.
I read it on the internet. That's
it. And so that kind of validation is very amorphous. It can be here, it can be there, it can shape shift from this, there, to whatever, to a particular person or a particular ideology. The question is, what's truth? The question the Pilate asked, what is truth? Now, this is where you and I have some differences, and I probably have differences with some of your people who are watching. But I would say, at least, I would pray that people would try to find a reasonable core of what truth is. So if we start with truth, the answer of Jesus was, I am the truth. So he didn't declare truth. He was the embodiment of it. He was God eternal, created all that is, and therefore he is truth. Now, if we start at that point, and this is my perspective, and we move forward, Christ is truth, then obviously it diverges from there into various people writing about Christ, and then various people who follow him, and then various people through the ages who pretend to speak for him. It does get murky. So we have to come back, and that's why they established what we call, as you know, the canon of Scripture. So there was this effort to solidify in an objective sense from the Old and the New Testament that which was believed to be breathed and spoken by God. So at least there was, as it's referred to, an infallible rule of faith. The problem is human interpretation. It always has been. And you can take any one scripture and find a dozen people at that bar who will all have a different viewpoint.
Yeah, for sure. Again, with the with the rise of this stuff on the internet and just in general, I feel like it's come back, right? We had the satanic panic, we had all of this stuff early on, kind of thing, but I feel like there's a rise in it. We look at some of the names that I mentioned, Brother Wayne, Daniel Adams, but there's other people they're getting hundreds of thousands of views of exorcism videos. It's amazing. I praise God for it. But in the midst of that, the wheat and the tares, there are copycats. There are people who are faking exorcisms. There are people who are from California, and they're paying actors in those things. And I think there was an article with you in it saying that it was the same person that you guys did a deliverance, on. But and I know you probably didn't know anything about the individual, but there are definitely people who are faking exorcism.
Yes,
for sure.
yes.
What would you say to that? Because some people would justify it because we faked one, but it opened the door for all of these other people to get healed, because now it's this kind of thing that, the next demon's manifesting.
I've had people who come and try to fake in my seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they go on the internet afterwards, say, aha, I faked Bob Larson. But
yeah.
the problem is, at the time, who's to know what was really going on?
Yeah.
If someone is willing to mock God, I understand they were mocking me, but if I was there in good faith representing Christ and they're mocking that, who's to say what was really happening? And I always give people the benefit of the doubt. When people come to see me, even when they tell me the most outlandish stories, I listen. I don't say that can't be. You can't have that happen. I just want to hear their existential reality and then try to see if I can help them come to grips with that. And I don't think anybody on the planet hears any more odd, strange, weird things all day long than I do. And I listen to these people with a straight face. And are they making it up? Are they delusional? Are they psychotic? Is it not mental illness? Is it something that really happened to them? And believe me, there's stuff out there going on that is real. And it's so far outside the confines of our normal time-space universe. Yeah. So you have that happening. And then the question is, but how does that not go crazy? And that's where the challenge is. The problem that I see is the individualization of spirituality to the extent that, as you've already said, anybody who's got a microphone and a camera becomes an expert. And we need to be a little bit cautious about saying, well, who did this person follow? How did they get started? Where did they come from? For example, I've written 40 plus books, and some of them, as you know, are pretty big books, pretty serious books. And one of the things I always say to people, well, before you follow somebody, have they published anything that they say? Is it in print? Have they laid it out there? Have they systematically shown you what their theology is and what their approach to spirituality is? If they haven't done that, then their opinion is just as good as somebody else's. And when young men come to me and ask for advice, I say one of the first things you should do is, if you believe something, put it in print, write it down, lay it out there, because somebody could say something and it passes quickly. But if you've got it down there in black and white, then you're accountable for it. You can just say, well, I was talking off the cuff, or I didn't understand the question, or I was whatever. Yeah. But when you put it in print, then it's open to peer adjudication. Others can look at it. Others of similar minds can analyze it, whether or not it's true. So that was my advice to everybody. And I think if we did that, not that you can't put a lie in print, of course you can, but you're accountable for the lie because it's there in black and white.
Yeah.
Or on the internet, in the sense that, okay, I'm stating this and such here on the internet now. It's for posterity, and I'm willing to be held accountable for it.
Yeah. With this idea of truth seeking, right, and myself included, so many people who are open to grow. We've stood for things, we've debated things, we've attacked people, we've lost friendships on subjects and things that we were literally like willing to die for, that we're kind of embarrassed of now, because we had that sense of pride, and we were young know-it-alls in that sense. So there's like these things that we say today, tomorrow we may. That's why I'm not so accusatory with a lot of people. I've done it, I come from that, and I don't want it done to me. But I mean, what would you say about that? Like even in putting a book out of your writings, I'm sure there's things that maybe you feel differently about or were
Yes.
extreme or something like that. I mean, what would you say
Yes.
to that idea of growth? Because with that being said, then it's like this passiveness, like don't say anything because you may disagree tomorrow. You may have a change of heart.
Well, there's a certain sense of humility that needs to be necessary for anybody who's going to take a public platform, and whether they put it in print or put it on the internet, and be willing to say, I was wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things, not wrong about anything that I quote from this book, because it's the book I'm quoting.
Yeah.
Maybe at times I've been wrong in how I have seen it. Now, there are people who are willing to die for whether or not they're pre, post, or mid-trib, when the rapture of Jesus is going to take place. And they will go to the mat over a particular belief system. And then, if you stick around long enough in this religious environment, as I have, you find out some of these people 10, 20 years later are saying something totally different.
Yeah.
So what is essential truth? What is essential belief? And what is core to who we are and who God is and what that relationship is? That's what has to be cited. What's the essentials that I will die for and I will live for? And then we look beyond that to see that it, as much as possible, conforms to what the Bible teaches, but it's not something I will die for. I will not die for how you should or should not be baptized.
Yeah.
I will die for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I won't renounce that. But am I going to die for whether or not somebody was sprinkled or dunked or they did in the swimming pool or the ocean or whatever? No. That's a case in point. So we need to decide when we go to war, and we're all in a spiritual war, what is it we're willing to fight for? And what is it that's somewhat negotiable? And there's latitude of belief. So what am I willing to die for? Jesus Christ is the Son of God, the creator of all that is, God eternal. I'm willing to die for the fact that he defeated the devil in the wilderness, and that the devil is a real being, and that Jesus Christ conquered him at the cross, and through his resurrection from the dead, he gives us life eternal because he conquered hell, death, and the grave. That is what I am as a person. Is that you?
Yeah, I love it. Truer words have never been spoken. Right. I like it. Really quick, I got a bunch of questions. I'm trying to breeze through some of this stuff. The Satanic Church, Anton LaVey, like really big, back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, vampire culture, all of this stuff was blowing up. Marilyn Manson, those things. Would you consider yourself friends with the LaVey family?
I know them, and I know a lot of people in that movement, and did get to know them, and actually took a lot of heat for spending time, hanging out with them, going to dinner with them. I mean, it was the most improbable of collusions, but, I wanted to know what they really thought, why they believed what they believed. And you don't find that with somebody ranting in some type of public forum. You find it when you sit down and break bread with that person and look them in the eye. Well, why are you this way? Why do you want to believe in this? Why do you want to follow Satan? And who is he really to you? So, what I discovered early on in my conversations, like with Zena LaVey and Peter Gilmore and Nicholas Schreck and all these people. And I forgot, my good friend just had him on the show recently, called him the #1 Satanist, Boyd Rice.
Yeah, that was a good interview. I watched that.
All those people, they have real lives. They have real bills to pay. They have mortgages and car payments, and they have aches and pains, and they see doctors, and they live in a real world too. Yeah. What is that like? How much does their belief system really affect that? And that's what I've always wanted to get to know about these people. And as a result of these things, for example, and I've told people this, Zena LaVey told me that she had put a death curse on her father to kill him. She hated him so much.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I was a little taken aback when she told me that, and he was dead a few months later. I don't know whether she knew he was sick and she was trying to take some credit for it, and I talked to her about that. Your father is a Satanist, but it's not going to do you any good to hate him. That's not going to get you anywhere in life. Hating him just because he's a bad guy and you resent what he did to your mother and how he treated her and that sort of thing. So, and when I would sit down with these guys, I mean, when you'd get a band like Asheron or Morbid Angel or these guys, and you get them off their platform, I'll tell you an interesting story. A couple of years ago, I was in Norway, and who should show up at my seminar but Necrobutcher? I don't know if you know who Necrobutcher is, but he's with the band Mayhem, and he's one of these outlandish Nordic satanic metal bands. Okay, this guy shows up. I was shocked. And afterwards he says, hey, man, let's go get a beer. And I said, if you'll buy me a ginger ale, I'll do it. Okay. So he and I hung out till 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, this is the most improbable of things. Is, hey, let me show you a smile on my back. And he takes off his shirt and he's got this huge upside down cross tattooed on his back. And he's really proud of that. And so here this guy and I are hanging out till 3 o'clock in the morning talking about God. Okay. I don't know if that it changed anything in his belief system, but we're two human beings coming from two different perspectives. And I just wish our world could talk a little more closely like that. Look, I'm out to change lives. I'm out to change opinions. I'm out to change what people believe. It what drives me. I don't want people going to hell. I want them going to heaven. And so I believe there's a heaven and a hell, and a God and a devil, and I'm out to change their opinions. But at the same time, I realize that in our humanness, we all have things that we struggle with. And you know, without going into personal things, which I wouldn't, I discovered some of the struggles of this man who is the absolute epitome of worshiping the devil through music. And as you know, I toured with Slayer.
Yeah.
And here I am with these guys, hanging out with them for a couple of weeks all over Europe in the bus. And, you know, they're high and hash, and I'm sitting back there reading my Bible. But I wanted to know, you know, what do you guys really like? What are you up to? Why do you do all this stuff? We don't talk to each other. We scream, we yell at each other. And worst of all, today we get on the internet, which is this bully pulpit where everybody thinks they're an expert in whatever it is they're saying because they got a camera looking at them.
Yeah. You know, I achieved somewhat of a, I don't know what you call it, but influence of people watching my podcast and listening to these conversations. And it seems like a big deal. You mean so much, what you do represent, blah, 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 blah. And I'll just simply say, I just have conversations with people, like open, honest conversations. I try to find what I can, agree on and just build upon it and actually double down. You know, you kind of from the place of finding what we disagree on and doubling down on that. But that's the majority of the church. And so, you know, what I did differently, you can't talk to those people. You can't go on tour with Slayer. You're still getting some of that pushback, and it's all stemming from just having a simple conversation with people. And it's helping so many people to sit down and just talk. And one thing that I felt like the church told us we couldn't do is helping so many people.
Well, we couldn't talk to the wrong people, because if you talk to the wrong people, there was this danger of their ideology invading yours. So, you know, here you and I are having this conversation, and we've had conversations before, and we do have substantive disagreements.
For sure.
We do. Okay. So what is the point? You know what I believe, and I'm not entirely sure what you believe, but I have a good idea of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But it's a lot different from where I'm coming from. Okay. But we do share this this antipathy toward a group think, a theological group think, that beyond what the Bible says are all these other rules. And we're not talking about, you know, You can't kiss a girl, or you can't dance, or whatever. And you got to get footloose. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, can we be a little more understanding that people don't approach it quite the same?
Yeah.
And of course you grew up in a Pentecostal environment where, a Presbyterian in a ministerial robe,
yes,
delivering a calmly articulated sermon was basically of the devil.
He was deceived. Yeah.
And the Catholics, oh my goodness, they're all going to hell. 100% of the Catholics are going to hell.
Well, that's why these conversations are so liberating, even for me, because I totally had that. I preached that. I told them they were going to hell, all of them. Even the Christians and the Baptists and all of those things. And I don't like, I feel bad about those things. So now I take the other approach. But at the end of our conversation, and I seen it in the conversation you had with the Nazi guy, the racist guy that you interviewed. And at the end of that interview, you told him he was a good sport. I'd love to have you back on. And then at the end of our talk, same thing. TruthSeekah, you were a great sport. I'd love to have you back on. And all of my friends were like, oh man, I couldn't watch it. I'm so nervous. I said, listen, I've never got into a theological debate with a Christian who shook my hand and told me I was a good sport and wanted to have dinner or let's do it again kind of thing. Like, they're never speaking to you again. Like, you're an enemy, you're deceived, those things. So that was something that I could see, and I noticed and I respect it. And like you said, I think we need to have that conversation and that heart, a lot more.
Well, the reason I think that I'm like that a lot is that even though, again, I don't negotiate away what I believe, but I also know what it means to be an outsider, a pariah, a leper, if you will, to the religious system. And I know the ways that they tried to force me into conformity. And without going into it, I paid a very dear price at many particular points in my ministry because I would not kowtow to the powers that be. And I just believe I needed to cast demons out of people. And, nobody else was doing it, but I was going to do it and so on. And, the thing that the Lord constantly impressed upon me is that instance where Jesus spoke to the woman at the well. Here is a woman who had 5 husbands. She had a really screwed up life. But he didn't start out saying to her, you're just a whore. Now let's see if we can get you cleaned up and follow the right path. He listened to her, talked with her. And of course, in that day, you didn't do that. You didn't speak to a woman, and a Jew didn't speak to a Samaritan. So he was doing something that was absolutely, totally unclean to do. But in the end, I'm sure you know the story, he offered her the living water of himself. It wasn't a polemic. It wasn't a sermon. He listened to her pain. And then he said, there's a way out of this. And I think sometimes we're so insistent on making sure people conform to ideology. And ideology is important and theology is important. I'm a theologian. I've written theological books. But it's the humanity of an individual and their pain and what they're going through and offering them compassion and hope that ultimately is the Spirit of Christ. As you know, I'm strong, I'm outspoken, I have very serious belief systems, but at the same time, I know there's a time to speak that and articulate that, but there's a time to step back and see the humanity in an individual. And that is what the church has missed many, many times.
So good. Something that seems so simple, but yet so profound at the same time. Bob, there's a lot of people out there struggling. There's a lot of people confused with conflicting beliefs. They find my podcast. They follow researchers. They come here. The pastor said this. People are all over the place, and they're dealing with dark stuff, and they're looking for freedom. You do one-on-one sessions. You do counseling. You do all of this stuff. if somebody wants to reach out to you and do a session with you, work with you, get some of your materials, where's the best place for them to do that at?
They just go to my website, boblarson.org. Everything is there. Scheduling sessions with me, getting the materials, learning about people in their area that may be available to help them. There's a wide variety of resources, but the important thing is that people reach out. I had a virtual session. Again, I refer to what I did yesterday because I do so many of these, I can't remember past 24 hours. Yeah. But here was a young woman. She was a singer, a bar singer. How she was making her living. And I'm staring at her halfway around the world. And, here is this young woman who has had multiple relationships, which has been broken. She was very much like the woman at the well. And all I did in the beginning was just listen to her story. I didn't say to her, look, when you decide to get out of the bars and quit singing there, then maybe we can have a conversation. Okay. And she's doing coke and she was doing, when you get done doing coke, you come talk to me and then we'll see if we can get somewhere. Yeah. I just said, I want to hear it. And then she starts to cry. She starts to tell me all this weird paranormal stuff, the voices in her head, telling her to kill herself and telling her to do all of these things. And in the end, I did an exorcism on her. And I did pray for her to give her life to Jesus Christ because I believe that's absolutely crucial. But I didn't put that at the front of the conversation. And that is the challenge with religion. When we say, well, up front, you are either this or you can't be this. And then, Jesus didn't do it that way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes he healed people and there's no indication he even said, you have to believe in me. I remember one time a Buddhist lady came to me. And as you know, I've written on, the contradictions between Buddhism and Christianity. But she came to me and she had been sexually raped and molested multiple times. And I just talked to her about that. And I didn't challenge her and say, well, you got to turn from Buddhism or I can't do anything for you. I said, I would like to pray for you. Okay. I started to pray for her and this demon manifested, growling, screaming, throwing her all over the place. We had 3 guys hanging on to her. And I cast out the demon. People say to me, you can't do that. Because she didn't become a Christian first. Yeah. So you can't cast the demon out. I said, who says that I can't do that?
I just did.
People, as I read the life of Christ, I have to wonder how many people he healed and performed miracles on who never followed him. Yeah. In fact, there were 10 lepers and only one of them followed him. The other 2 just got up and walked away. But when it was over with, I just gently said to her, I said, I did this through the power of Jesus Christ, not me. And he is the one who has given me the ability to get rid of this demon, and he wants you to follow him. Can we do that? And she agreed to do that. But my point is, if we put a barrier of ideology before we get to the need of the person, we're not doing what Christ did.
That's good. Bob, I know you got to go. One last question, because we mentioned Anton LaVey. On his deathbed, there's a lot of things about specifically him and Crowley on their deathbed. And it was Heidi Baker, I believe, in an interview, who said that Anton LaVey on his deathbed maybe gave his life to Christ, or said some things like, "Oh, I didn't know it was going to be like this," or "Something's not right." Those kind of quotes. Is there any validity to maybe LaVey coming around on his deathbed in his final breaths to Christ?
You're putting me in a tough spot because I have no idea.
These memes are everywhere.
I have no idea where she got that. Okay.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah.
But I know people who knew him, who were there, and people who were around him, like Blanche Barton, who was with him at the time, and others, and they all vehemently deny that there was any second guesses on Anton LaVey's part whatsoever. Christians like to believe that, they like to believe that in the last moment, somebody's going to see the truth. But the reality is, and I think this is a warning to people, when you set your life in motion, yes, there's the thief at the cross. Okay, he did that. I get that. He repented at the last moment, and Jesus said, you'll be in paradise with me today. But for the most people, you set your course in life, you're not going to change it in the end.
Yeah.
A few do.
Yeah.
But in most cases, if you're a bad guy, you're going to die a bad guy. If you're a good person, you're going to die a good person. If you are an individual of faith, you're going to live out that faith to the end. You might reach out and grasp it for an instant, but it seldom happens. And to my knowledge, Anton LaVey did not. I don't expect to see him in heaven, but I'm not God. I leave it open to the possibility. I know he knew who I was, and he listened to what I said, and he observed what I did and didn't like it. But hey, I was even told that he had a little respect for me.
I'm sure he did.
That's saying a lot.
I'm sure he did. I even, I could see it. I could see the mutual respect, especially with his daughter Zena in that conversation too. Satanism is a polarity. Satanism is a response to Christianity, and it's for something that's not original, like everything, your tenets, your doctrine, your church, it's a response to something that already exists, kind of thing.
Well, I'll tell you something before I go, and I have seen this played out over many, many times. The majority of people in Satanism are ex-Christians. The majority are ex-Christians. And I remember in one of my seminars, there was a group of Satanists, all dressed in black and doing their thing, sitting there. And there was a young woman sitting on the aisle, and I went by her, and I just stopped for a moment, and I said, "You look really angry." She looked at me and she says, "When are you and the rest of the preachers going to do something about sexual abuse in the church?" And she's all black, tattooed or whatever. And I said, "Were you abused by a priest or pastor?" She said, "Yes." I said, "What kind?" "A born-again preacher." Well, I knew that's why she was a Satanist. She had flipped.
Yeah.
She had gone to the dark side because she was so angry. And the belief system of Satan allows you to hate those who hurt you and to strike back against those who strike you. Anton LaVey said it himself. Hit back. You don't turn the other cheek. And yet I realized that she was there as a Satanist, wanting to defy me, not because she was a really bad person. She was broken, she was hurting, she was wounded, she was devastated by what a horrible individual in the name of God had done. And sometimes we need to look past people who do bad stuff. I'm not saying we look lightly at evil, or that we don't hold people accountable for their actions. Sometimes if we scratch below the surface, we find out that they're acting out the anger of an injustice. And if there's something we can agree on, it's getting that person some help to positively deal with that injustice. So I got a question. I got to go in a second. Who's on your wall behind you? Who's looking over your shoulder?
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah, with the light.
Okay.
It's
kind of dark. I just see this figure peering over your shoulder.
Yeah, well, I got the one with I like that. I like the one with the light coming out of his heart. Like he's showing it's a sacred heart, but it's shining brightly. So much love and light within his heart.
Be careful, the Sacred Heart is a Catholic thing.
I've reconciled it. I've reconciled
just
that.
Thought I would tell you that, in case you needed to know.
I got set free of that spirit. For sure. Bob, we got to do a part 2, man. I have so much more questions for you. I'd love to have you back on. Thanks for hanging out with me. It means a lot. And everybody go check out his website. I know there's people out there hurting. I get their messages too, and I get too many that I can't. So I want to send some people Bob's way who are dealing
Send
with
it to me.
demons. And
I'm ready.
the real.
I have Bible and cross will travel.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be with you. And I just want to tell everybody, Jesus is the way, the truth, the life, and no man comes to God the Father except by him. That's what he said. He was a liar or he was speaking the truth.
Hey, I'm joking. I'm joking. You're absolutely right. I'm with you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Peace.
All right. Bye-bye.
Man, such a good talk. And so many people didn't think that he was going to come on. So many people said, yeah, he's not going to do it. And, you saw that persona. You saw what he is like with the collar on, and so it's a certain time to get serious. It's a certain time for debate. Like, he's well trained in what he does, and he's good at it. Shout out to Bob Larson. But there's a human side too. There's a side of study. There's a side of intrigue, of what, like, putting in work, and that's something else that we have in common, that I wanted to talk to him about, just beliefs and those things, and so much more, guys. Listen, I had so much more to talk about that I wanted to go into detail about. Listen, angels. We wanted to talk about angels. Like, if there are, if a third of the angels fell and became demons, and whatever other theology you follow out, but if only a third, and we have 2/3 that are still good guys on our side, like, why don't we see them more often? Every Christian has a experience, a story, or they see demons in people. They watch a television show, demon. They look at somebody's lifestyle, demon. They look at this, demon. If there are more angels, shouldn't we be able to look at that same stuff and maybe say, okay, this is the good in it. I can see God working. I can see the angel. I can look at this person's life. I can see the good at it. Good in them. Bless them as an angel. They should be able to see the angelic at work in their life. But just as many Christians don't believe in demons, there's an even greater number that don't believe in the angelic, or at least that you have access to the angelic realm, that you have friends in high places, that the helpers, that the messengers of God are watching over you. Such things as the great cloud of witnesses and so many angelic experiences within the Bible, and probably way more than the demonic. But the Christians can't see that. They only see the evil. They kind of got an evil eye. Hey, evil eye. They can only see the evil. They've trained themselves to do so. You can train yourself to see the good. Jesus had to have it. Had to. When we look at the story that Bob was speaking about, the woman at the well, or the woman caught in the act of adultery, like, you got all these things against you. And the Pharisees were there ready to stone the woman caught in the very act of adultery. She's this, she's that, she's this, we caught her, look, she's in the very act of it, like we caught her doing it. And it's so, the law says to condemn her. Hold on, wait, what are you guys doing? This is somebody's mom. This is somebody who's struggling right now to pay bills, and you just want to kill your wounded? Mighty, very Christ-like of you. And hence the spirit behind many of the Pharisee personifications within the church now. But Jesus had the ability to see another outcome. There was one outcome there where she got stoned and she died. But there was another outcome where she's restored by somebody seeing life in her, speaking light into her, and radically changing her life forever. That's why you need to train your eye to see both. See the good and see the bad. We got to be able to see both. Don't ignore it. Don't stick your head in the sand, but be able to see both. You're playing the devil's advocate, TruthSeekah. Yeah, because both exist. And I get to choose life or death. I get to choose right or wrong. I get to choose left or right, yin or yang, up or down, east or west. It doesn't matter. There's polarities that exist, and we get to choose, and we're going up the spiral, going back and forth of the polarity. Choose life that you may live. Every moment is a choice. And I pray that you make the right choice. I pray that you pursue righteousness. I pray that you pursue peace, even with those that you disagree with. No. Especially with those that you disagree with. So for me, starting out, I was talking about deliverance. I was talking about demons. I had interactions. I worshiped the devil. I made pacts with entities that most people, thank God, will never even know exist. I was pulled into a realm, into a world that existed within our reality, a consciousness where these beings get direct access to you. They got direct access to me because I opened up doors that weren't supposed to be open. But the conversation is that people have opened and are opening up these doors, either knowingly or unknowingly. And when they come to you for help, you give them a pill. When they come to you for help, you tell them, don't worry about that. You'll find out when we get to heaven. God will deliver you from it when you die. And people aren't satisfied with those answers, so they hit the internet. And there was many times early on where I would speak about deliverance and speak about interacting with demons and other spirits on the other side. And I would go to churches to do my music, but then I would share, because my music was about spiritual warfare. And I would share about these encounters, and I would preach and pray for kids, and people would come up. But the pastors would pull me to the side and say, hey, I don't think any of our students have demons. Just don't speak on that this time. And then they wanted to pick my songs and do the worship songs. Don't do the spiritual warfare song. You know, and it was that kind of pushback. I was like, okay, you guys really don't want what I have to say. And then I would go to rehab centers like Teen Challenge. And mind you, Teen Challenge was full of adults who were struggling with drug addiction, who were struggling with mental issues and all of this stuff. And I would go there and we would do music, and I would share my story. I would share my testimony, and I would speak on the reality of the demonic realm. And people's eyes would get so wide, and they were hungry, because they understood that if Christ set me free from my mind games and demons and mental stuff going on, that he can also set them free. They would hear my testimony. It would build hope. And the leaders would come and ask me not to speak on that these guys aren't ready for that. They're just baby Christians. They're not ready for the demon talk yet. Hold on, these guys are addicted to crack cocaine, methamphetamine. These guys are mixing medicine. They're mixing drugs together, creating a concoction, but they're not ready to talk about the reality of the demonic influence in their life, and pharmakia, and summoning spirits like a witch's cauldron. They're not ready to have that conversation. You're not ready to have that conversation, is what it came down to. So, doing it online, taking my ministry, my story, my testimony, my beliefs, my vulnerability online. Hence the TruthSeekah podcast. Hence my music. Open for exploration, but still having that foundation. Christ crucified, gave his life for me, reached out to me when I was at my lowest, when I was at rock bottom. It wasn't Buddha, it wasn't Allah, it wasn't Muhammad, it was Christ Jesus. To him be the glory. If it was Buddhist, if it was Buddha, I would be Buddhist. If it was Allah, Muhammad, I'd be a Muslim. It was Jesus Christ. Reached out to me in the simplicity of the gospel, that while I was yet a sinner, Christ died for me. And he died for you. And that freedom is available for you as well. Listen, I hope that you're encouraged by this episode. I hope that you can see past the personas that I have, that Bob has. We represent different things to different people. There's, which a lot of people saw in the first conversation that we did on his podcast, on his YouTube channel. So, man, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for watching this episode of the TruthSeekah podcast. If you'd like to support, become a member, visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of music, my meditations, Thursday night hangouts, Sunday morning prayer, meditation, everything that I'm bringing to the table, webinars, extra interviews, so much. Go check it out. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. I'd love to have you. I'd love to talk to you. Join our community today, would you? Allow me to give a shout out to some of the latest patrons within the last week or two. No, I haven't been doing a lot of podcasts, but we got a lot of new people who joined, so bear with me. Thank you to Boom Diggity for coming on. Shout out to you, man. Welcome to the community. Marcus Wilson, thank you so much. Elizabeth McGiffin, thank you, Elizabeth. Means the world. Thank you for your support. Soren Roy, shout out, man. Welcome. Matt Rhodes, welcome, Matt. How are you? Rebecca Peterson, welcome, Rebecca. Hello, my friend. Marie Eid, welcome, Marie. Great to have you. Talea Curtis, welcome to the community, my friend. How are you? Kelly, what's up? Welcome. Stephen Nelson, welcome, Stephen. Shalom. Kelvin Mamuti, welcome, Kelvin. And Katie May, thank you guys for believing in my work and partnering with me via Patreon. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.